Hello. In this video, I want to talk about Cartesian skepticism, and in particular, Descartes' project in the first meditation. So, in order to understand kind of his overall project, and particularly what he's trying to do in the first meditation, it is important to kind of understand what it is that he's trying to accomplish from the outset. And what Descartes is trying to accomplish is he's trying to establish a foundation of beliefs on which he can justify or build the rest of his belief edifice, if you will. So the reason for this is because throughout the course of his life, Descartes came to the realization that a lot of the things that he thought and held to be true turned out to be false, even though he had good justification for these things. And so in order to kind of do away with all of his false beliefs, or even beliefs that may be true but aren't grounded on that aren't grounded on good justifications, what he wants to do is get rid of as many beliefs as he can, and then identify those beliefs which are indubitable, or in other words, beliefs that are impossible to doubt. And it is through these indubitable beliefs, or beliefs that are impossible to doubt, that he's going to build this epistemic foundation on which he can then go ahead and justify all of his other beliefs. And he's going to do this by implementing a type of skeptical methodology. So let me present the picture of what Descartes is trying to do, right? So suppose that this is kind of the inventory of all the beliefs that Descartes has. And these are kind of general beliefs, right? So I have beliefs about mathematics, beliefs about what exists, beliefs about scientific conclusions. Of course, Descartes is going to have individual beliefs about mathematics. So he's going to believe, for example, that 2 plus 2 equals 4, that 2 plus 3 equals 5, and so on, right? But I'm just going to group all of those within, say, mathematical or beliefs about mathematics. And he's going to, same thing for beliefs about what exists, right? And so on. So amongst these beliefs, a lot of these beliefs are going to be true. But again, what Descartes wants to do is he wants to justify all of these on a firm foundation, because in particular, when it came to beliefs about scientific conclusions in his time, or perhaps the nature of God, there were certain things that Descartes came to the realization that some of these beliefs actually turned out to be false. So what he wants to do is essentially, again, get rid of these beliefs in some ways, and then try to identify those beliefs which are indubitable. The way that he's going to go about getting rid of these beliefs is by implementing what we'll call a skeptical hypothesis, and then testing these sets of beliefs or groupings of beliefs against the skeptical hypothesis. And we're going to use this skeptical hypothesis as a test to see whether these beliefs turn out to be indubitable beliefs or not. So what is a skeptical hypothesis? Well, in brief, a skeptical hypothesis is just a proposition or set of propositions, or if you will, a story, right? Any story that, if true, it would bring into question other propositions that we already believe. So for example, suppose that I believe that my American Airlines flight will leave at 1 p.m. sharp from LAX, right? And I hold this belief, and you can even say I'm justified in holding this belief because I have the ticket in hand, and I'm looking at my, at the flight logistics, on my phone, whatever, right? So I'm pretty justified in holding this belief. But then one of my friends comes along and he says, well, how do you know? It's possible that there could be a disgruntled employee in American Airlines who's about to sabotage all operations in order to delay flights from LAX, right? This friend need not have any justification for presenting the skeptical hypothesis, but here's how the skeptical hypothesis works, right? If this is true, if the skeptical hypothesis is true, then it would be impossible for my belief to be true, right? So if this is true, in other words, then I don't know that my American Airlines flight will be leaving at 1 p.m. sharp. I can't actually hold that belief unless I am somehow able to do away or dismiss or argue away, if you will, the skeptical hypothesis, because both of these cannot be true at the same time. Now, one thing to note about a skeptical hypothesis is that the person presenting the skeptical hypothesis need not have any justification for the skeptical hypothesis. The job of the skeptical hypothesis is merely to bring into question other propositions or sets of propositions. In this case, this skeptical hypothesis would bring into question this proposition. And really, that's all Descartes wants for his project. Because again, what Descartes is trying to do is he is trying to identify indubitable beliefs, beliefs that cannot be doubted. And so any belief that can be brought into question or doubted in light of a skeptical hypothesis, by definition, will not be an indubitable belief. So here's the general structure of the argument for like kind of Cartesian skepticism. So if I am justified, or anyone is justified in believing a proposition, then I am justified in believing that not the skeptical hypothesis. So in other words, if I am justified in believing that my American Airlines flight will leave at 1 p.m. sharp from LAX, then I am also justified in believing that this is false, right? Premise 2, I am not, if you are not justified in believing, or I'm not justified in believing the negation of the skeptical hypothesis, then from premise, oh, this should be premise 1, premise 1 and premise 2. Then from premise 1 and premise 2, it follows that I am not justified in believing the proposition in question. So again, going back to this rendition here, if I am justified in believing this, then I'm also justified in believing the negation of this proposition. However, if I'm not justified in believing the negation of this proposition, I'm not justified in believing this. And so again, what Descartes is going to do is he's going to create these kind of very general skeptical hypotheses. That's what he does in the first meditation. And he uses these to test groupings of beliefs to see if they pass this test. And for example, if we had a skeptical hypothesis that brings beliefs about scientific conclusions into question, right? And if we are not able to dismiss away, at least at first attempt, the skeptical hypothesis, then we know that by definition, beliefs about scientific conclusions are not indubitable. So they cannot serve as foundations for further justifying other beliefs, right? So we have to do away with it. So the idea is he's going to go through the systematic testing of belief groups, right? And ultimately only be left, ideally, with indubitable beliefs, whatever these are. We don't know yet, right? We'll find this out in the second meditation. So Descartes is going to identify, or at least he hopes to identify, indubitable beliefs. And once he does this, then he could go back and bring back all of those beliefs that he holds to be true and start justifying them on this basis. So this is just kind of like a made up hierarchy graph, right? But perhaps our indubitable beliefs serve to justify beliefs about existence, which then are justified to, or serve to justify beliefs about math, and also beliefs about features of objects and so on. But this is kind of the idea of the project and why he is talking about these skeptical hypotheses. Now, I want to highlight a distinction between two sorts of skepticism and then specify which of these types of skeptics Descartes is. So there is what's known as epistemic skepticism, and this is the position that of individuals who, are kind of always questioning things, kind of, we'll say, for the sake of questioning things. Or in other words, a better, more sophisticated way of saying this is that an epistemic skeptic is a person who is of the belief that there's very little, if anything, that we can know. These are the individuals who think that we really can't know anything, or the things that we can know are very limited. All right, so there's a position about what the limits of our knowledge are. On the other hand, we have methodological skepticism, and individuals who subscribe to methodological skepticism, such as Descartes, aren't necessarily skeptics about sets of propositions. They're not maintaining that there is a limit to our knowledge the way that the epistemic skeptic is. What they are doing is they are using skepticism as a methodology to test our understanding or knowledge of certain propositions. So it's almost like they're playing devil's advocate. They're saying, let's assume that this is false, or perhaps this could be false because of X, Y, and Z. And they're doing that to kind of, again, test what our understanding, whether individually or as a whole society, is about a certain set of propositions. And so it's important to understand that the type of skeptic that Descartes is a methodological skeptic. He's engaging in methodological skepticism in this project. With all of that on hand, now we can look at the three skeptical hypotheses that Descartes is implementing in the first meditation. So the first hypothesis that Descartes implements is what we'll call the deceptive senses hypothesis. And this is the hypothesis that states that, look, in the past or at times, our senses, right, have misinformed us about qualities in the world, right? So we've been wrong about features, of objects in the world before based on our senses. So what is it about this particular instance that that we can be so sure that we're not being deceived by our senses? So, for example, one example that people always use is on a very hot day, when you look out into the distance on the horizon, sometimes you see what appears to be a kind of body of water, like like a puddle, but the closer you get to that area, you come to find out that there really isn't a puddle of water, right? You were deceived by this. Or on the same, there could be cases in which you are looking at a particular object and you think it's a certain color, but then you realize that the light in that room is not, optimal. So then when you turn on the lights completely, you come to find out, oh, that's not the real color of the object. In fact, it's a different color. Maybe I thought it was, purple, but in fact it's red or something along those lines. So our senses are not as reliable as we make them out to seem. And so if this skeptical hypothesis were true, then it would bring into questions all of our beliefs about the qualities of objects. What it does not bring into question, however, are beliefs about the existence of objects in general and perhaps mathematical truths. So because of this, Descartes implements another hypothesis, the dream hypothesis. He says, look, there's times when we are sleeping and we think that the dreams or the stuff that we are dreaming are actually reality, and it's not until we wake up that we realize that the stuff that we were dreaming wasn't in fact reality, that it was a dream. So right now it feels like, all of this is real, but what is it that we can refer to, right, in our immediate experience that would lead us to the position that in fact we are not dreaming, right? If there's nothing that you can refer to right now to lead you to the belief or the conclusion, right, indubitable conclusion that we are not dreaming, then you cannot explain away that we are not now dreaming, right? And so this is the idea. And so again, if the dream hypothesis were true, then it would bring into question our beliefs about the nature and existence of essentially the physical world, everything outside of our perception, everything that we are perceiving, from the table in front of you to the sky to a mountain to right? All of this would be brought into question unless we are able to justify somehow that we are not currently dreaming. Now, note this is a little bit more difficult, and you could spend time thinking about this, but it's a little bit difficult to do this because in order to justify it, you would have to be able to reference something outside of your experience that would give you that justification. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So what the dream hypothesis does then is bring into question beliefs about the existence of objects and the nature of objects. What it does not bring into question, however, or at least this is what Descartes claims, is beliefs about mathematical truths. Because even in a dream, 2 plus 2 still equals 4. So in order to kind of test mathematical truths and essentially everything, what Descartes does is he implements this third hypothesis, this very kind of strong atomic bomb type of skeptical hypothesis. This is what is known as the evil genius hypothesis. And the evil genius hypothesis has us postulate the existence of an evil God. So think of, the Abrahamic God, except evil, all powerful, all knowing, blah, blah, blah. And this evil genius's sole purpose is to have created you and you alone and deceive you about everything. Now, if this evil genius hypothesis were true, then it would bring into question not just our beliefs about the qualities of the world, the existence of objects in the world, but also mathematical truths. We wouldn't be able to trust anything because in the back of our minds, or at least a lot of stuff, because in the back of our minds, we would always have to be thinking that it's possible we can be wrong about our beliefs because the evil genius could make it such that those beliefs are false, because that's all the evil genius wants to do. It's to just deceive us systematically. So this is a really strong skeptical hypothesis. But we will see in the second meditations, at least Descartes can argue that there's at least one belief that cannot be brought into question, even in light of the evil genius hypothesis. And it is that one belief that he's going to use to justify the rest of his beliefs. Okay, that's all.